God bless. All right, we're going to stop our live feed there. Thank you for coming to that. And we're going to look at some other things. I do have some slides that I put together, some things that I want to cover with you on these things concerning current events. I do not have a lot of notes. I'm flying by the seat of my pants. But I have some things I want to share with you. I don't know everything. I don't know. I have opinions. Opinions are dangerous. They're usually smelly. Everybody has them. And if you disagree, that's okay. Just don't get mad at me. I was last night was the first news I'd seen in a week, and turned it on. Special report. I flipped back and forth between ABC and Fox, and I got two different stories about the same thing. ABC, President Trump's an idiot. Fox, President Trump's a genius. Neither of them are correct. Go with me? Some of this, what I'm going to tell you tonight, may sound political. I don't intend for it to be. Does that make sense? I don't intend for it to be political. I intend for it to be informative. I intend for it to be my opinion, and if you disagree still, that's okay. So we're going to look a little bit at the United States, a little bit at Israel, look at a little bit at Iran, okay? Iran is Persian, not Arabic. Why does that matter? The countries around Iran that are Arabic include Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, it's in their name, Iraq, Jordan, Yemen, and others. All around them there. They're Arabic. Iran is Persian. They're all predominantly Islamic or Muslim. Their religion matters. Most of Iran is a different kind of Muslim than the rest of the Arabic world. There's the Sunnis and the Shiites. I think Iran is the Sunni side of things. And quite frankly, I don't remember which side is which, but when Muhammad died, there was a difference of opinion about who should succeed him. Some said he's got to be a descendant of Muhammad. Others said, no, it's just got to be a prophet. And one side was one, and I don't frankly remember which is which. But I will tell you that that's what the separation is of those two divisions of Islam is. And it matters. And what matters is Iran is different than most of the Arabic countries. And so they are at odds. Back in President Reagan's day, go back before that, Ford. Some of us are old enough to remember those things. First president I remember was Kennedy, so I was little, but I remember that. You see, listen, I remember that the United States was funding Iraq and arming Iraq so they could defend themselves against Iran. Or was it the other way around? They were funding Iran. That was Iraq. And then we had to go in and fight Iraq. Or we thought we had to anyway. We did. So I want to show you that Iran is Persian, and I'm going to show you some scripture. Daniel 5 says, then was the part of the hand sent from him, and his writing was written. And this is the writing that was written, Menei Tekel Upsharin. This is the interpretation of the thing. Menei, God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tekel, thou art weighed in the balances and art found wanting. Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So the Chaldeans, where Iraq is, the Mesopotamia, that is the place that is Iraq, between the rivers, Tigris and Euphrates, that was Babylon or the Chaldeans, and God took it away from them and gave it to the Persians and the Medes. Let me tell you who the Medes are real quick. The Medes is the modern day Kurds. the mountain people of northern Iraq and southern Turkey. When I was in Iraq, I was in Erbil, which is up in the Kurdish area, north, and we had a Kurdish interpreter that worked for us, and I asked him about the Kurds, who they were. He was, by the way, Eastern Orthodox Christian. He wasn't Muslim. And I asked him if the Kurds and the Medes, what their relationship was. He said, the Kurds, are the Medes. So you had the Medes or the Kurds joining an alliance with the Persians, Iran, to then control the area that is now Iraq. So they had all of Iran, all of Iraq, and probably then some. And they controlled that whole region, the Medes and the Persians. I'm not going to read the rest of that. I want to, but verse 31, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, the Mede being about 62 years old. In alliance with the Persians, their king was from the Medes. We'll look at that. In Daniel chapter 6, verse 28 says, so this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and then in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So Daniel, where was Daniel? He was in Babylon. And that was controlled by the Persians. Where were the Muslims at that time? They didn't exist. When was Daniel in Babylon? Give me a year. What do you think? 580s when BC, 580s BC, when the southern kingdom was carried captive into Babylon. It was in the 700s and something. The northern kingdoms went to Nineveh. The southern kingdom in 583, 587, I don't remember exactly. They were carried captive into Babylon. Remember the prophecy, for 70 years. They were held for 70 years. They were there longer than that, but they were required to be there for 70. So the Muslims, when did they start? Anybody have an idea? What year did the Muslims' religion begin?
580. 500-ish AD.
Go a little bit further. 630 AD is when the Muslim religion started. Actually, a little bit before that, because Muhammad died in 630, and then they took off from there. So it was already formed by Muhammad, and 630 is the official start of the Muslim religion. You're with me on that? Christianity was 100 years, over 600 years old by then. The Muslims are the Johnny-come-latelys. They're the new ones on the block. They aren't the ancient religions. The Persian religions back in these days were Zoroastrians and other kinds of religions where they worshiped moons and other kinds of gods. And you'll recall that the three Hebrew children went in the fiery furnace, and the king said, looks like God's in there with them. Right? So we see that. In 2 Chronicles, now the first year of Cyrus, the king of Persia, where the Lord spoke about mouth of Jeremiah. So we see again the Persians ruling that area. And then verse 33 or 23, thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath the Lord God of heaven given them. So that gives you all of that kind of information about that. Then we get to, let me show you a little bit about this one. The book of Nehemiah, it was several years. In fact, it was probably, they spent 70 years in captivity. The book of Nehemiah happens about 150 years into captivity. They had been legally allowed to go back to Israel for almost 100 years by the time Nehemiah happens. Why didn't they go home? Well, they kind of had it made. In Daniel chapter 8, describes the vision of Daniel as of a ram and a goat, the goat symbolizing the Medo-Persian Empire and the Greek Empire. The ram symbolized the Medo-Persian Empire and the goat, the Greek Empire. Let me read it. Let's look at it. This vision details the rise of the empires, with the goat's single horn representing Alexander the Great and the subsequent divisions of the kingdom into 4. It's right there in Daniel chapter 8. Divides it into 4. It's written out. It even says the Greek. Daniel, there says a small horn emerges from the 4, ultimately becoming powerful and persecuting God's people. Verse 19. And he said, behold, I will make thee know what shall be in the last end of the indignation. For at the time appointed the end shall be. The ram which thou sawest having 2 horns are the kings of the Medes and the Persians. And the rough goat is the king of Greece. And the great horn that is between the eyes is the first king, which was Alexander the Great. In 331 BC, on October 1st, I researched this the first time before I went to Iraq. I did it again today. It's called the Battle of Gaugamela. It's the battle for the city of Erbil. That's where it happened. Erbil sits up on a high plateau. From a military perspective, pretty defensible. When you say just very defensible. It's got the high ground. Very defensible. Alexander actually read Daniel chapter 8. And he said, well, I'll win. And so he attacked. He had a brilliant plan, though. He had a brilliant plan the way he did that. If you'll Google Battle of Gaugamela and just read about that, you'll get all kinds of stuff there. So Darius III actually escaped that battle, and he went off over into the Caucasus mountain range over along the Caspian Sea. He was caught over there eventually and executed. Darius III. Darius III. So I give you all that, and that's all of my notes. I don't have any more notes. The rest of this is I just want to share with you some things that I think are going on. I do not have any current intelligence. I did have a job one time where I got to sit in on at least 2 classified briefings a week, telling us what was going on all over the planet. That was during the time of the ISIS fight, so we got that briefing every week, and somewhere else where our forces were involved the other time of the week. So we had classified briefings. Now here's the reason I tell you that. I don't have current briefings. I'm not in that world anymore. But I know how they work. The people who are making decisions about going into battle, the people who are advising our commander-in-chief, have information that all of the social media commentators does not have. They have information that the news media does not have. Be careful listening to any of the news media exclusively and say that one's right. Just none of them are unbiased. Oh, well, I listened to this one. They're not biased. Yes, they are. I don't care which one you listen to. Some of them I can't stomach. I listen to it to get enough information to... I sat last night with my remote and I just switched back and forth between ABC and Fox, and both of them were just absolutely... Like I said, the president's a genius on the Fox side, he's an idiot on the ABC side. Neither of those things are true. He's neither a genius nor an idiot. But he does have information and advisors with lots of information that no one else has. You and I don't have it, the news media doesn't have it, and none of them has it. What they reported was that they have intelligence, actionable intelligence. What does actionable intelligence mean? That means we know this thing to be true, and we can take action to change the situation. We know where the nuclear things are, and we know that we can take it out and we can action it. We can do it. We know that. What they reported is that Iran was within just a few weeks from having a nuclear bomb that they could launch and use, with at least the reach to Israel, if not intercontinental to the United States. The problem with that is they have a stated intention to use it. They have demonstrated for decades, I can remember at least 40 years, where they have continued to attack American targets and Israeli targets, either directly or indirectly through terrorist organizations such as Hamas and Hezbollah. They have been limited with sanctions and freezing funds until a different regime, a different administration comes along and releases funds and sends them pallets of billions of cash that funds their operation, that stops keeping a check on their nuclear capabilities. In fact, one administration actually gave them uranium. If you want to identify idiots, you might look there. I may be in trouble for this getting a little bit political, but y'all just have to throw songbooks at me if you want to. But when our current administration decided to take action, here's the flip side of the question that they had to ask. They asked basically two questions. What happens if we do this? What will be Iran's reaction? Will a third party react? They have to answer that question before they make that decision. The other question they have to ask is, what if we do nothing? What you hear on the news media side that says that the president is an idiot, they're saying they're not considering the question of what if we do nothing. If we do nothing, will we get attacked? I remember 9/11 very clearly. So Iran didn't attack us in 9/11. No, but proxies did. What if we do nothing? Their stated purpose and intent is to the annihilation of Israel and the death to America. That's their stated purpose. Let me tell you something a little bit personal. If anyone walks up to me and says, my stated purpose is to take you out, they're probably going to get a reaction from me. What do you think? Do I have to wait for them to hit me before I react? Listen, if we're waiting for Iran to hit us, we've been hit over 600 times in the last 40 years. Do any of you have watched the news program Nightline today now? It's on late at night. Nightline. It's a late show. It comes on after the late evening news. You know, it's an ABC news program. I'm not sure they still have it. They did for years. Ted Koppel, you may recall. Some of us old enough to remember that. You know why Nightline started? Iranians took over the embassy in Iran, the American embassy in Iran, and held U.S. hostages for over 400 days. When it first started, the late news, right after your late news went off at 10:30 or Eastern time zone 11:30, then they would have a news broadcast to tell about the Iranian hostage crisis. Eventually, they made it permanent and called it Nightline. And that news program continued for years after the Iranian hostage crisis was over. President Ford attempted a rescue. C-130s and helicopters. They were landing in the desert. They called the Desert One. And they'd never rehearsed anything like that. And a helicopter and a C-130 got together and crashed, killed some of our guys. And the rest of them had to run for their lives. And it went bad. That is the beginning of the 160th. After that, they stood up the 160th, special operations insertion teams, aviation teams, so that they could carry out missions like that. So now they rehearse them. They rehearse for stuff like that. They know they can do it now because they practice it. They train for it. So for 40 years, we've watched Iran attack us, either directly or indirectly, with proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah. You say, well, Hamas and Hezbollah haven't attacked anybody in the United States. I don't know whether they have or not. I don't know of any. We know they attack our friends. We know they attack Israel on a regular basis. They have been very much deteriorated over the last year. They have been reduced greatly in the last year because Israel has reduced their capabilities greatly. But yet they continue to get funding from Iran. And quite frankly, I don't like it. I think that the United States... So let me address another question. Is Israel today the Israel of God's Israel? Yes. At least 2/3. What do you mean by 2/3? Well, Ezekiel, Valley of Dry Bones, and I'm going to turn there, talks about the bones coming together and the flesh coming on the bones. And then the third step is the blow of the Spirit into those bones. What we have is Israel existing again, May 14th, 1948. The bones come together. They established a government. The flesh came on the bones. They won't get the breath blown into them again until Jesus puts it there when he comes back. That's the prophecy of the Valley of Dry Bones in Ezekiel. So yes, 2/3, they will be. And the Abrahamic covenant applies to them. What's the Abrahamic covenant? You be good to Israel, God will be good to you. That's the Abrahamic covenant. You be good to Abraham, God will be good to you. That's the Abrahamic covenant. If we want God's favor as a country, we must be good to Israel. I was born 10 years after that, after May 14th. I was born May 31st, 1958. But I studied history. After World War II, one nation had a nuclear bomb. The United States. Russia was still our ally after World War II. We fought on the same side. Did you know that in World War II? We were on the same side with Russia. A couple of things happened at the end of World War II. They started a division. Russia took over half of Germany and the northern half of Korea. They took over that and said, nope, we're going to hold that. Wouldn't let them be their own country. They decided to control that. Let us know they were not exactly fair players. But at the time, May 14th, 1948, during that time leading up to that, Russia was still an ally with the United States. The president was Harry Truman, I believe. Anybody know Harry Truman's personal religious denominational faith? Yeah, he was a Baptist. What do Baptists believe about Israel? That they should be a nation? The Rothschilds in England offered to buy more land in South America than is the size of Israel and give it to Jews and say that can be your homeland. Why did Israel want a homeland? because they had been persecuted. They were the focus of World War II in the Holocaust. And that drove them to want to go to their own country. But there's only one place that can be Israel. Only one place on the planet that can be Israel. And so they went there. They were going back there in droves from all over the world where they'd been persecuted. Anybody remember the name of the president when they organized to be a country again? Their first president in modern era? Anybody remember his name? Yeah, it's David. David Ben-Gurion was the president in 1948, or prime minister, whatever they called him. David Ben-Gurion. I thought that's ironic or providential or prophetic that his name was David. They became a nation. Almost immediately after that, they were attacked by the Arabs. Can you imagine 7 Arab countries all around them attack them at once? And they won. So they won because the United States defended them. We did not. I read reports that tanks on an attack into Israel were left running with fuel and ammunition, and the occupants of the tanks got out the back door and ran away because they saw an enemy in front of them that they couldn't defeat. God is mighty big. And when He fights for you, you win. I am thoroughly convinced that God fought those battles for Israel. There was a 6-day war. Not only did Israel not get defeated in the 6-day war, but they gained territory. That's why they control the West Bank, and at the time Gaza. They won't give up the West Bank. What's the West Bank? It's the West Bank of the Jordan River. Why? Because it's strategic militarily to keep it. So they want to hang on to that. They don't exactly control it as a country, but they sort of do. So what does all that have to do with what's happening now? It has to do with Iran and many of the Arabs. Their motto is from the river to the sea, that they control it all. What river? The Jordan. What sea? The Mediterranean. That's where Israel is. From the river to the sea. Get rid of Israel. Have you looked at the size of the territory of Israel and the size of the territory of all the Arab countries? It's such a tiny spot on the planet. From the northern border of Israel to the southern border of Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, about 150 miles. It's about half that wide. Rhode Island is bigger. And yet they want to drive them from the river to the sea. And Iran's stated purpose is the annihilation of Israel and death to America. And they have both attacked and made threats to attack. And I believe that the intelligence tells our country and our leaders, our representatives, that they were going to gain the capability to launch a missile with nuclear warhead in the next few weeks. Israel went in with fighter planes. They took out targets that they could take out. One country on the planet has a plane big enough to carry a bunker buster bomb. One country. Let me tell you about that. If you've been watching the news, you see this. The weight of those bombs is 30,000 pounds. That's a big payload on a plane. That takes some lift capability in the air. Those bombs were developed, according to the news, for North Korea. Not true. I remember that they were developed to take out Saddam Hussein because he was hiding in deep bunkers and they wanted to get him with that. So they had to create a bomb that would pierce into the earth as much as 60 feet and then explode. That's what those bombs did. They pierce into the ground as much as 60 feet and then explode. Did you know that Iran had enough warning that they moved all the people out from those sites and nobody was killed? The Iranian people themselves were not targeted. The Iranian military was not targeted. Only the nuclear sites. Very precise, surgical precision strike to take out the nuclear capabilities. And if their battle damage assessment is accurate, Iran, if they were left completely alone now, couldn't have a nuclear bomb in the next century. Several decades at least. Because they don't have the capabilities. It was completely destroyed. Now, if you follow social media, they are like the news media. President Trump is either a genius or an idiot, depending on who's speaking. I'm going to tell you that neither of those things are true. President Trump, with his advisors, is very, I believe, wise. He's willing to take action. In the New Testament, we're told kings don't go to war without counting the cost, whether they have sufficient to win. Do you not think that we didn't take that into account as a country, as a military? Can we win? Can we take that out with the surgical strike that we need to take? And can we stop this threat from happening? I assure you that assessment was made thoroughly. One of the things I learned in history was that the United States is really, we have by the way, currently, all of our war games are away games. Don't you thank God for that? We can project power to anywhere on the planet. That was demonstrated yesterday. Great power to anywhere on the planet. We can sustain that power over time. We have depth. No other country has the same reach nor the same sustainability that the United States has. No other country. Where I think the United States is at risk is when we underestimate the insurgent kind of force. We underestimate the roadside bombs and the low-tech fight. We underestimate the low-tech side of it. We have superior dominance in the high-tech side. Y'all with me? Absolute superior dominance on the high-tech side. On the low-tech side, our enemies in Iraq, you know what they said about the United States? They said the United States has all the clocks, but we have all the time. Listen to that carefully and it makes sense. They weren't in a hurry. They'd outweighed us. What they were saying, we have all the technology, but they have the time to wait us out. Afghanistan, they proved themselves right. In Iraq, they've proven themselves right. I don't believe the United States is trying to control Iran. We don't want to control it. We want somebody there that's going to play nice and play fair. We are not imperialists. We don't want to be there and control it. We just want everybody to leave each other alone and get along. I'll stop right there and tell you that's why I think we did what we did, because the threat was imminent. And the capability, in conjunction with Israel, taking out the air defense and some of the other things like that, to go ahead and take out their nuclear capabilities, was a strategic and timing opportunity. And they did that because the nuclear capability was imminent in Iran. I believe that to be true. And so they took advantage of it. They stopped that immediate, that short-term threat. I don't know answers, but I'd entertain questions.